my talk is a little bit different from Ruth. So, and it is more on the survey I've done recently, the interview and also the web-based questionnaire. So I'm not doing the eye test, so I'm not supposed to read the abstract. So this is the title of my talk, To Measure or Not to Measure User Experience. This is quite a big debate. So, and actually, my affiliation says I still do affiliations. I'm from Leicester. So at the same time, I'm also affiliated with the ETH Zurich. So actually, I'm not far away from where Ruth comes from. It's Leicester and Loughborough. It's the middle regions of UK in England. So when I go out to present talk, I always have to explain where Leicester is. That's why this map is always showing in my talk. So because it's a relatively small city. So, and actually I myself trained as a psychologist, but I'm now working in computer science department. So our department focuses more on the software engineering algorithm, but human-computer interaction is growing. So I hope you bring more talented people to my group. So, and the motivation to do this research study is always think about user experience is a quite emerging area in human-computer interactions. It's quite different from usability. Usability sort of established. We have different metrics to measure effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. But when you talk about experience, people say, can I measure experience or not? So if you come from psychology backgrounds, you will get the answer, yes, why not? We have measured for centuries. But for those who are not really come from psychology background, or even the psychology themselves, they also doubt rather measure experience is the valid way to go. So, and through various discussions with the colleagues and other researchers, so and I come, if you go to the physical science, I ask about, can we measure temperature, can we measure length, weight? Of course, they will say, why not? It's a traditions. That's why we call science. So here's the famous law, Kevin. So when you justify measurement, we always quote his saying that if we do science, we have to measure, otherwise you cannot gain knowledge. This is his position. But if you're coming from social science background, for example, can you measure trust? So quite often you will get the answer, it depends. It's a quite safe answer anyway. So, but then it depends what. So, and then this is that's why motivated me to and other my colleagues to look into this issue. In user experience, can we measure how we can ensure the measurement is valid, meaningful, and also useful? So that's stimulated me to do the so-called UX experience measurement attitude survey. It looks like Christmas, but not yet. Coming soon. So of course, at the beginning we have to talk about what are we talking about measures itself. The definition of measure is not clear enough. So that's why I looked into a traditional handbook about measurement. So the author is a coincidence, called Hand. So the quantifications, the assignment of numbers to represent the magnitude of attributes of a system we are studying or which we wish to describe. So this is the definition of measure, it's a quantitative. So then I go to interviews, 11 person, I will report the results very soon. So the question 1 to question 4 is some typical demographic data. So then I ask them what is a measure in their interpretation to make sure that they are not too deviate from what I understand as a measure. So and then I ask them, have these 5 quite provocative statements, some of them, not all of them, to sort of stimulate the discussions to think about the measurement issues. So, and then they also give me a 5-point Likert scale. So when you do the interview about measurement, of course you can escape that we have to do some measurement ourselves. So, and then they have to explain the ratings, why they consider this statement is relevant or this is sort of agree with the statement or not. And also have a question, ask them about the experiential quality relevant to their work. So this question also the rationale behind to make them think in their work, do they do measurement at all? If they don't, why they don't do the measurements? So it's a kind of go to the next question. So then I broaden up the question. So some measurement or some construct related to their work, maybe some construct in general they think is almost certain can be measured. So what is this measure and how can they do it and when they do it? And is there any reservation about the measurements? on the opposite end also ask, is there anything that's impossible to measure? So they also have to think, turn their head around. So think about, argue why these constructs are not possible to measure. So and further, I give them some tough questions or more annoying questions. So any theoretical argument that they know or they support is for or against measurement. Any methodological arguments, any practical argument. This is quite academic, I have to say. So, but then the last question, the practical, may be more relevant to professionals. So I interviewed 11 researcher, UX researcher, and practitioner. So, and most of them actually are from Finland. I'll explain later why is such. And UK and also the Netherlands. So, and 7 female and 4 male, around 40 years old. So, and most of them work with a project related to the industrial development. So 8 are design-oriented, 3 they're research or their work more evaluation-oriented. And they're 4 years in user experience, but of course you can argue what do you mean by have user experience work, because this term is still vague in the community, I need. So then I'll show the results about the 7 statements, sorry, the 5, not 7, the 5 statements on the UX measure. So the first statement is UX measure needs increase of knowledge. It seems quite obvious, but from the results, it's not. Some of them quite have reservation about that. So the increase of what kind of knowledge actually can increase by measurement? So the reference against which products can be compared. Okay, it's fair. And the extent to which the development goal is achieved. The values to be delivered by certain design methods, information helpful for future project, and experience per se. But again, from the interview, from the response, I can observe the ambivalence in their attitudes. So the participants 6, there are ways to get knowledge about UX in a more meaningful way rather than using measures. But I still think that they are important. So they say, okay, you can go ahead to measure, but I may not use myself, although I understand and why you do the measurement. So a need for training, also some people express the concern that somehow the measurement may be, you need some more training in order to make use of the measurement. So it requires people using the measure, understand the measure and what it actually means. There might be people who are not trained to use UX measures, no matter how well we define the measures. So there's this theme comes on coming up in the interview. They say maybe we are not well equipped or not well trained for this to make use of the UX measure. The second statement is quite provocative. It says UX measures are insane. So people may, to the other extreme, say, oh no, you cannot do measure at all. So, but you can see that some of them really agree with this statement. 1 to 4, the range. 5 is very agree. 4 is agree. So then, but when we discuss about what is the insanity here, so the insanity is when UX when not in the UX measure itself is not insane, but insane is what claims we can make about the UX measurement, especially when people do not understand this measure, or they intentionally to misuse them to guide them to make some decisions, or they're unaware of the inherent limitations. So they know that when you do some measurement, you have to take into consideration maybe some factors influence the validity. You have to take this into consideration, or over-formalize them. So this is the measuration express, or the insanity they see it may happen in UX measure. But they also about the concern about the implication when you do the measurement. What's the use you can make use of them? So for the purpose of the participant 11 is a research designer. So for the purpose of design, measuring variables up to a very high degree and intricate level of measurement may not be that purposeful. Because you have to translate, this is very important, to translate the numbers back to design requirement. I think most of the designers find this missing gap. This gap or the missing link is frustrating. So they find measurement may not help us to design at all. So this is the attitude. So about the UX measure, I paint this statement. So the response is it depends on which phases of development you're talking about. If you talk about the preparation, Of course, if you want to define valid and meaningful metrics, it can be very painful because you have to look deep into literature and do a lot of pilot studies, and it can be painful for the researcher or for the professional to do it. And data collections, yeah, if you have to recruit the participants and very time constrained, maybe you can only have 30 minutes to interview or to do your measurement in half an hour. So then, and also this is from the researcher perspective. From the user, if you depends on what kind of approach you use, you can be very intrusive, or the process so lengthy that you really cause some pain to the users cognitively. And this is and also the data analysis. This, as I mentioned, the education, the training issues coming up to say, I get the measure, so how can I analyze the data? Sometimes you need very advanced statistics, but the researcher or practitioner are not equipped to do it, so they find it very difficult. And the interpretation, of course, sometimes the measurements are supposed to be objective, but still when you come to the interpretation, it's a very subjective process. So then they say lack of knowledge, confirmation bias, attempts to draw implication from exact measure for design. This gap may be somehow will stretch far too much. So we have to find the link between the measurements and the design. So the UX measures are important for design. This is quite consistent. Yeah, they agree on this, but there are also still some ambivalence here. So then look at this, the identify design constraint and justify design decision. The UX measure can help in this regard because they give you the sense of reliability, especially when you have to convince the management people that because we have to change the design because the respondents have this opinion and their response is like that. So, but then they also express that but the numbers are not enough. I still need some qualitative data to support the UX measure, the measurement. So like this quote, I mean they're important, but I do not base my design solely on the UX measure. There are lots of things that I don't think we can measure properly enough yet. And also, this is a quite reserved attitude as well. I can see relatively little value of applying UX measure because they don't really link to the product attributes. So against the link between the measurement and the design requirement. In most cases, to link it at an abstract level, it's hard to trace what the underlying causes for certain response. It is almost impossible if you just use UX measure without combining them with qualitative data. So the trend now is always talk about the mixed method. So yeah, it's not surprising this response in some of the respondents. So UX measure are important for evaluations to justify the decision and validate the design goal, and also, as I in the previous slide also talk about the sense of reliability. Because if you just rely on the designer intuition, maybe not enough. You have to have some so-called data to support why you make this design decision. But then there are some, again, the reservation here. We don't have a good chance for problem measurements. It's a limited time. In industry-led cases, they are more keen on fast phenomenon. The industrial people want to improve design, but not really want to provide input for the academic world in general. So it's the gap between the research and practice. We talked for ages, for years, but this gap is still there. And it's not been proven yet they can make any difference. They refer to the UX measure. And I mean, they could be certain if you include traditional usability measures, so people still think about the olden times, so to say, the traditional way. Then persistent task failure for many designs is going to be something you want to know, but I don't think they are automatically important. They mean the UX measurement. They are all hinges around design objects, what design objects you're talking about. So this is the so-called the reservation, and also there's some ambivalence in their response. So the measurability of the experiential quality, if you remember, some question asked them to name some of the construct, UX construct, they're sure they can measure and not sure, and so-called non-measurable. So I use this scheme, this so-called CUE, the Q scheme, to analyze or to classify the construct they identify. So there's instrumental quality, basically is usability traditional measure like effectiveness controllability, learnability is on this side. This is the instrumental quality. And the non-instrumental quality, like visual aesthetics, symbolic identifications, and the motivational constructs. This is the non-instrumental qualities. So the idea is that these perceived instrumental qualities and perceived non-instrumental qualities, it will influence the emotional reaction, the affective response. Here we define as a short-term experiential reaction, like I feel happy, I feel disgust, or I feel fear, surprise, or then go to the long-term so-called appraisal of the system, or you call it evaluation in some sense. There's a more long-term effect of interacting with the system on user affect, attitude, and cognitions. So we use this diagram to analyze our data. So this diagram shows that what is absolutely, they think, all agree that this construct are consistently considered as measurable. And this is some consistently think is not measurable. And some there's overlapping. Some construct, some participants think they can measure, and some say no, they cannot measure. So it's the fun. And for the non-instrumental quality, it's the curiosity. So, and actually, if you look at this and instrumental quality, like reliability, is a very established concept anyway, already in software evaluations. So it's not surprising that all agree that reliability, this is the construct they name. So they named this reliability. Nobody named reliability is not measurable. So, but the evaluation, look at this for the non-measurable part, love, happiness, and enlightenment. So this is you can argue this is a long-term so-called appraisals of the system. So I just came actually from Slovenia yesterday. So I was in a training school. I asked the students, the PhD students, to debate about the measuring love. So there's a quite interesting argument. So they say love is something very difficult to define, so it cannot be measured. But some still try to do something to measure love, like a chemical measurement, something like that. So this is, but from the 11 respondents, they say, oh, this is not possible. And surprising, happiness, they also think it's not measurable. But look at that, I heard quite a lot recently about measure the well-being. So, but from the respondent, they say this is not possible. But look at the fun. But the fun, I also surprised to find out some participants named not only one, as I think 2 or 3 named fun can be measured, but also 1 or 2 named measure cannot, fun cannot be measured. Because fun actually, what I find surprised quite recently, maybe 10 years or even longer, game is a thing that we try to measure how much you find the game is enjoyable or fun, but still some people think this is not measurable, because the argument say this is a very complex. Fun is, and you cannot break it down to measure a single figure. So those who argue a measurable construct, the construct are well defined, the construct are already documented in the literature, so yeah, this is quite obvious. But non-measurable, they say the qualitative data are better for understanding feeling. That's why love, happiness, you cannot measure. Or the vague nature of the experiential quality, so same as or similar to the point number 1. And lack of unified agreement of what UX is. This is the reason underlying why they think cannot be measured, and some of the construct especially is not well defined. And doubt about the validity, impact, and completeness of UX measures. So this is the reason underlying the think why some construct cannot be measured. So again, going back to the more so-called academic discussions about the theoretical issues. So they name several concern about the measurement. So the problem of measurement UX in a holistic way. This is already quite a long discussions among the researchers. So experience is a whole, is holistic. You cannot break it down into elements to measure it. But this is depends on your philosophical position, so to say. So still some work going on this discussion, on this debate. And also actually, if you're familiar with Daniel Kahneman, so he always talk about actual experience is a remembering. It's not on the spot you report what you have experienced. It's just as a retrospective you report back your feeling. So, but then this is a memorizing experience. It's a prone to fading, and also you can make it up, especially when at times after weeks or after even hours, your experience is not what exactly you feel at that moment. So this is another concern when we discuss about the measurability of UX. And also very high sensitive to the timing and the nature of the task. So it depends if the task is a long one, maybe lasts hours or days. If you want to measure the experience of involving in this task or interacting with the system, so what you can get is just a summary, not exactly the moment-to-moment experience. So, and the methodological issues. So, somehow they argue that for in industry, so maybe it's somehow overgeneralized. They say that in industry, somehow, as you see one of the quote, they say they want something fast. They have no time to look at in the detail. So maybe the industry, they will more pro measurements. But for the researcher, they have longer time to look into the phenomenon. They want to study it, understand in a better way. So they may more pro the qualitative approach. So, but maybe this is not the way because recently I talked to some Google researcher. They say, oh, we love qualitative research. So quantitative may help a bit, but we still want to look deeper into the qualitative. The reason behind why people like or dislike something, or how they enjoy or not enjoy something. So I think this picture is not yet that clear. So maybe now we have stereotype. I always say in the professional world or in the industrial world, they prefer quantitative. Maybe it's not the case anymore. So and also if you're very resource demanding, if you have a large number of heterogeneous users, so in this case, you may go for the quantitative to gather the data so-called more easily, but actually it's not necessarily easily because you have to develop a very valid instrument, take a lot of time. So, and also for the methodological issue, if you measure experience, so they always argue, can experience can be predicted? So you give an early prototype, can you really elicit the authentic experience when they really interact with more high fidelity prototype? So they argue at which stage we can evaluate experience. Is the early stage maybe what you get from the respondent is not really what they can feel later on. So this is about do we have to measures only towards the end of the development phase, or by some means we can measure in the early phase of the development. Yeah, the practical issues are, as I already mentioned, the lack of knowledge. So about the statistical methods, or somehow even the qualitative, some people have the difficulties to analyze the qualitative data. So, and then some respondents say, yeah, because the qualitative data analysis is timely, it's lengthy, you need also specific training. But on the other hand, for the quantitative, the statistic, you also need knowledge to get the meaning out of it. So, and then, yeah, unlike usability, we don't have standard. We have a standard on using UX definition, but we are quite skeptical about this definition. So we are something we still work on it. So, and also if you about the decision making, as I mentioned, that sometimes we need number to convince the executive, the management about the decision making about the design options. So, and Don Norman, he, in one of the interviews, he said, oh, UX measure, you have to do it because we need some number to convince the CEO, even the number have to be made up. So I was quite surprised that you have to make up the number to convince the CEO, then can be some ethical issue involved, I know. So, and so towards the this almost the end of my presentation. So the concluding remarks from this 11 interviews quite in-depth. So the attitudes towards UX are quite ambivalent. Of course, they depend on the position or the philosophical position of the researcher and the practitioner, and also their experience as well. So, and this is, I can, from the 11 interview, I can summarize. This is their general thing I can get from them. So I sympathize why people want to measure user experience, but I don't do it myself because I don't need such measures for my design work. So this is the general feeling I get out of socialization. It's also my feeling. And because just 11 interviewees, you say, may not be generalizable. But I get actually from the interviewers, quite maybe half or more than half of them are sort of design oriented. You can remember 8 of them are design oriented, 3 are evaluation oriented. So design oriented UX people more skeptical about measurement. So this is from the informal chat with other people that I met in conference, in workshop. So I get the feeling really maybe design people, they don't find the usefulness of the UX measure for them unless this gap can be bridged about translate the measurement into the design requirement. So then I want to know the bigger picture, so I conduct an online version of the UX measurement attitude survey. So maybe some of you have answered, I don't know. And then the paper has been written up, the data have been analyzed, but now it's under review. So, but interesting that when I sent out this survey, I got a response from a very famous UX researcher, but I should not name it. So then he wrote back to me, can measure be, why he queried why I did this survey. He said, of course, psychology have been doing this for over hundreds of years. Why you bother to ask it? So, but then if you look, if you go to talk to the UX design, the research designer, they would totally disagree with this. So this is the psychology. Yes, they can measure experience. Are they useful? Not for the design work. So, and some even claim that doing measurement over formalized sort of destroyed the very strong word that some people use, destroy the UX community. So, but I don't want to put it in a very extreme position. But there are definitely some people out there are strongly against UX measures. Oops. Okay, so why my researcher, my interviewer come from Finland? Because I'm going to visit Verpiroto in Finland for 1 week. So this is the work we can work together. So also we have this short-term scientific missions sponsored by this action. I'm chairing this action as well. So thank you for your attention. I hope I talked too long. So thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Effie? Down the back?
I was just curious, you didn't mention Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi or flow.
Sorry?
Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and like the whole notion of flow, the study of optimal experience. And I was just curious, have you looked into that? Because needless to say, there's a lot of research that's been done in that, and it's very well regarded because it definitely relates. So I'm curious about it.
Yeah, interesting. The 11 interviewer, they didn't mention about, because this is the construct. I didn't make it up myself. Is they through the interview they elicit the construct. So then this is what they have mentioned in the interview. So yeah, flow is quite obvious. You expect the interviewer will mention, but they didn't. They just mentioned about fun, about curiosity, all these constructs that some of them I didn't expect they will mention. But flow, yeah, interesting, they didn't mention.
Yeah, because I think you could actually use the framework that Mihaly created for flow to measure experience, which you should take a look at.
Okay, yeah.
Another thing too is, I mean, if you look at in terms of a holistic measure, Net Promoter Score is definitely a measure of experience. It might be a blunt instrument, but when applied just post-context, so you walk into a store, you get someone as they're walking out of the store, you get them just after they've disengaged with a mobile app, you get them just after they've gotten off, off a call center, what have you. All of a sudden, with that data applied to, journeys, you actually have very robust kind of understanding of experience. It may not be kind of cut up at the level that you're talking about. It is a holistic measure, but it's a very, very powerful measure, for sure.
Okay.
So, a few thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else? Yes?
Yeah, you say that some people question whether it's possible to measure certain things. How can you be sure that it isn't just that they find such measurement distasteful? Yeah,
it can be. Yeah, so from the survey I mentioned, the web-based one, there are some people express this, have this attitude, but I didn't report to here in these presentations. Yes, there is this kind of, they are very, find it, measurement is not that, as you mentioned, it's distasteful, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Any more? No, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.